This is a story called The Monument to the Elm, aka The Tree Man. When I was a kid growing up in Waterloo, Iowa, we had elm trees everywhere. They were these big, magnificent trees. Some trees were, some streets were completely lined with elm trees, and that included the street where I grew up. But in the 1960s, when I was a teenager, the elm trees began to die. It's called Dutch elm disease. I think it involved a little beetle. This is what would happen. Your big elm tree, a part of it would start to die. And the whole process would take 2, 3, 4 years, but eventually your entire tree would be dead. And it wasn't just your tree, it was all the elm trees all over the country. The death of the elms, it was this kind of terrible thing that was happening all over the country. After a while, there were tree skeletons. If an elm tree died in town, of course, it was removed. People would be afraid it would be struck by lightning or would fall over and hurt a house. But out in the country, you'd find these tree skeletons. All the bark would fall off the trees. One time, a friend and I were walking in the woods, and one of these, I think it had been hit by lightning, and smoke was issuing out of the cracks in the tree. It seemed almost magical. Well, this is the University of Northern Iowa, where I got my bachelor's degree. And on the corner there, as you approach the university, is the Lutheran Student Center. And they had one of these lonely, dead elm trees. And they decided they would try to do something with it. And I guess they knew an art student, a man named John Faust. I think he had graduated from UNI. And they commissioned him, or at least convinced him, to turn their dead elm tree into a really big statue. And he created this. It's called the Monument to the Elm. I think it's more than 20 feet tall. It's like 20 feet of stump, and then two branches were turned into those outstretched arms. Though everybody called it Tree Man, as I recall. One kind of unfortunate thing, right there beside it was a volleyball net. And my friends, not very respectful, they tended to call him Saint Volleyball. And I have to admit, I was not that crazy about Saint Volleyball. I mean, every time I'd drive to UNI, you'd go right by it, and there'd be this tormented guy, and you go, oh, for God's sakes, I really wasn't in the mood to see this tormented tree every day. Also, boy, a dead tree out in the middle of nowhere, you can turn it into a sculpture, but nothing is going to save it from weathering, and the fungus got into it, and insects, and of course it was attacked by woodpeckers. I think the woodpeckers created two big holes right in the chest of the tree man. After a while, it was dangerous. The foundation, it was, getting weak and cracked, and who knows, it might fall over and crush some of those volleyball players. Well, that led to a campaign. It was either going to have to be removed or it was going to have to be saved. And a lot of people raised money. I think thousands of dollars were raised to save the tree man. And while that was going on, the tree man, as you can see here, was encased in a kind of a scaffolding structure, and a safety fence was put around it. And I have to admit, I began to like the tree man. Something about the tree man in the cage appealed to me. It was like now I could see why he was tormented. He was trapped inside that cage. The artist said he didn't really intend to save the tree man. I guess it was okay with him if the tree man was saved, but he thought of the whole thing as a statement about death and dying. And in this phase of the tree man, I thought it really was a statement about death and dying. We hate death. We're afraid of death. We try to keep death from happening. We keep our old people alive in these intensive care units and hook them up to wires and anything to keep people alive for another week, another month, another year. Can we do it? I don't know if you can see it there, but the tree man was entirely encased in plastic. It was so pitiful when I would drive by. I was truly moved. I thought the artist had indeed achieved a work of art at this point. Eventually, however, no matter what, the tree man was too decayed, too dangerous to survive, and the tree man finally was removed. Rest in peace, tree man. You lived and died for 20 years.